It's finally upon us. The Steam Deck release day. Yes! And everyone who had their hands on a Steam Deck early, like the news outlets and whatnot, like The Verge, like a lot of big YouTubers, they're going to start putting out content right now about the Steam Deck and their experience with it. I am sadly not one of those people. Us mere peasants who just pre-ordered it as customers, we have to wait to pay first off to pay for one, and then to wait for it to arrive, and then get our hands on first impressions. But these buggers, like the Verge, got theirs early, and they've already put out a review for it. So let's get into this review. Let's see why the Verge says the Steam Deck is not ready. Because I'm curious to know why. This is going to be a bit of a long-winded video because I'm going to read the review from top to bottom. If you want to check the article out, click the link in the description right now. Go check it out if you want. And also, it was written by Sean Hollister. You can follow him on Twitter at Starfire2258. And let's see what he's got to say about the Steam Deck, shall we? So here is the review. The Verge. One thing I appreciate about The Verge is the fact that they've got a great photography department. They take some cracking shots of tech that they review, and this one's no exception. It always looks really crispy, right? So let's see what the review says. Steam Deck review, it's not ready. Early access memories. Both of these things are true. First, I'm having more fun with the Steam Deck than any gadget I've tested in years. Second, Steam Deck is a mess. It's rushed, unfinished, buggy, unstable. If Valve sold the console I've been playing at Best Buy or GameStop, people would return it in droves. Oh, oh no, that ain't good. Of course, Valve isn't stocking this $400 handheld gaming PC at Best Buy. The maker of Half-Life and Portal is trickling out directly to devout fans of Steam, the platform that pioneered the idea of selling early access games before they're actually complete. Remember when Valve let an unknown developer sell a broken, buggy game called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in early access? I do, because I love that game. I love playing it on early access. He says it changed the world. The bugs didn't outweigh the fact that its unproven formula was uniquely fun to the point that PUBG, its clones, and the games it inspired, including Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, Apex Legends, rank among the most popular titles around the globe. That's true. I'm a massive supporter of early access. One of the games I play a lot on this channel and on my Twitch page is Escape from Tarkov. It's been in the beta, or it's been in early access for years, and it's still not finished yet. But I appreciate being given the opportunity to test the game out, put forward my suggestions, and help mold it into the best game ever. I love early access games, big supporter of it, and I like getting my hands on things early. And so I think where he's going with this is he's saying that the Steam Deck is very like an early access product. There's going to be a lot of bugs at first. We're going to get us early adopters are going to bear the brunt of most of those bugs, but hopefully in the long run it's going to be a success. So of course, so what else has he got to say? The Steam Deck has a unique formula too. It's a Linux computer that plays Windows games like a Nintendo Switch with unheard of bang for the buck. And just like PUBG, a game I played for 452 hours despite glitches, I can't get enough. Welcome to the early access game console. There will be bugs. So yeah, that's one thing about the Steam Deck, guys, is that it's at an unheard of price point, and I think Gabe Newell said it best when he said that it hurt to hit that price point, because if they made it $1,200 or $1,300 like the Aya Neo handheld gaming PC, Windows gaming PC, then I don't think a fraction of the people that ended up pre-ordering the Steam Deck would have pre-ordered one if it was at that price point, just because that's a lot of money for anyone to spend. I don't think I could justify spending $1,300 on a handheld console, right? But this thing is coming in at $399 at the lowest price point, and it's going to offer you better performance than something like the Aya Neo, right? Which costs $1,300. And plus it's got a lot going for it too. It's got better inputs, it's got a lot going for it, custom OS, everything. So yeah. So Valve, The Verge has given it a 6.5 Verge score. I'm not exactly sure about the Verge's scoring system. Some websites have a quirky scoring system where their top score is like 8 or something. Instead of 10. So I might need to look into that. But they give it a 6.5. Good stuff, powerful, high quality hardware at an unheard of price, infinitely customizable controls make decades of games playable. That's true. Easily lets you balance performance and battery drain. Suspend and resume games. That is big. That is big. Doubles as a full Linux PC. Yep, you can't do that with your Nintendo Switch, can you? You can't plug it into a dock and hook it up with external monitors, Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, and use it as a PC if you want to. You just can't. So that's one thing that the Steam Deck's going for it. I love the fact that it's a portable gaming PC in your hands. But the caveat is with that, you're going to have a lot of the same issues that you deal with on PC, like corrupt games at times, crashes, you name it. It's not going to be as polished as the Nintendo Switch, and I don't think they're catering the Steam Deck towards the same sort of crowd as the Nintendo Switch. I think the Nintendo Switch is I don't think little Timmy, the 5-year-old, is begging his mum and dad for a Steam Deck for Christmas. Maybe he is. Who knows? Or old Grandma Betty down the street, wants to play a bit of Sudoku on her Steam Deck. This isn't catered for those sorts of normie people, right? It's catered for people that have an interest in PC gaming, who know a little bit about PC gaming and Steam, and want to be able to have access to all the games they want to play, not just games that say Nintendo handpicks to have on their system. And one of the things I like about the Steam Deck is the fact that we will have the opportunity to run whatever game we want. The it may not run as well as we want it to, but we at least get to try to run it, right? That's the beauty of this. We have the power in our hands to play what we want to play on it. Not We don't have to beg Nintendo or beg Dice to launch their games on this on the Steam Deck as we do with Nintendo Switch. So that's one thing the Steam Deck's going for, it is that we have the control, but with that we also have a lot of tinkering to do on top of what we'd have to do with the Nintendo Switch. We have a lot more graphic sense. So the bad stuff, unfinished buggy software, that's a given. Noisy fan almost never stops whining. Some of the most popular games still don't work, and I'm guessing they're talking about Call of Duty Warzone, stuff like that with anti-cheat. 2 hours or less of battery life at the highest fidelity. Not something I'm too concerned about because it does have a 720p display. It's a smallish display, so I'm not really going to see much of a difference if I crank it up to max graphic settings. I'm happy to play things at low to medium settings anyway. Let's get one thing out of the way. It's easy to look at pictures of the Steam Deck, see a Nintendo Switch, and imagine yourself magically playing a gigantic library of PC games that just work without messing with graphic settings or controls. That's not the Steam Deck that exists today, and not just because the Steam Deck is an absolute chunk that can practically fit a Switch between its grips. No, today's Steam Deck expects you to tweak more, and forgive more than your average PC, not less. And by what he means by that is the fact that it runs Linux. You are going to have to tweak things. Everything's not going to run flawlessly. Not everything runs on Linux first of all, so it's going to be like you are going to have to tweak things, try things out, see if things run. It's not going to be as forgiving as a gaming PC that runs Windows, whose games are designed to run on like desktop gaming PC hardware. You will have to do a little bit of tweaking and test to see which works and what works and what doesn't work. But yeah, he says, but for me, the magic of Steam Deck is this: it makes PC gaming truly portable for the first time ever. Awesome. What do I mean? Last year I borrowed a then state-of-the-art Aya Neo handheld gaming PC and managed to play through Persona 4 Golden on that $800 and up Windows machine, but it never quite felt like a PC gaming to me. I could barely navigate the West with its joysticks and touchscreen. There wasn't enough performance to competently play even moderately demanding games like Outer Worlds and Valheim. There were no precision controls for shooting or point-and-click titles, and there was no point in bothering with anything but the lowest graphical settings. There was also no way to quickly and reliably suspend the system without losing progress. The Steam Deck turns all that on its head, starting at just $400. Its custom AMD chip with RDNA2 graphics instantly outstrips every portable gaming PC on the market. While you might still struggle with the very latest titles, it's got enough oomph that I'm playing Control and Resident Evil 2 Remake at a smooth 60 frames a second per second outside of the big fights, and I can even turn the graphics up if I'm willing to accept 30 FPS. Older or less demanding games can easily run on their highest settings like Max Payne 3 or Mirror's Edge. So, good. Now, the Steam Deck specs. Let's get to those. 7-inch 60Hz, 1280 by 800 IPS screen with 400 nit brightness. I'm glad it's an IPS screen, so we'll get deeper blacks. 4-core, 8-thread AMD Zen 2 CPU, and 8-core AMD RDNA2 graphics. 1 GB video memory. That's not a lot considering my graphics card there has like 12 gigs, and even that I don't think is sufficient enough for the sort of system I'm running. 16 gigs of DDR5 memory, 8 GB accessible by the GPU. Then you've got your 64 GB eMMC slower storage with 256 and 512 GB SSDs, 40 watt hour battery, USB-C port with USB 3.2 Gen 2 data, display port 1.4 out. I was gonna say, I wonder why they never allowed Thunderbolt on this thing, but it doesn't have an Intel CPU unit, so that's why. USB-C power delivery charging, dual band Wi-Fi 5. I wonder why they never went with 6. Bluetooth 5. UHS micro SD reader. I'm glad they included an SD. I'm glad they included a micro SD slot. Really glad they did. And a 3.5mm headphone jack. It's good to know that some companies out there haven't abandoned the headphone jack. I still love it. Um, so yeah, and the game you're and he says, and if the game you're playing really doesn't need the juice, say Hotline Miami or Nidhogg, you can throttle the frame rate and GPU clock speed or even the processor wattage to prolong the deck's battery life. It only takes 3 taps, and an awesome open source Mango HUD overlay gives you instant feedback on your frame rate, clock speeds, frame times, and even how quickly you're draining the battery and how long it's likely to last. Now, this is one of the benefits of running SteamOS's Linux kernel, right? Is that the operating system that ships with the Steam, it's going to be designed to be as user friendly as possible by Valve themselves. If you do happen to install Windows on this thing, you're going to have to install all these tools yourself. Whereas on Steam's OS, it's all going to be baked in to the experience, and it's going to be easy to access and easy to fiddle with. But on Windows, you're left to your own devices with all this stuff. But it's not that hard to really. I'm sure developers are going to make their own sort of software to make it easier on Windows with the Steam Deck. You're just gonna have to wait for it though. So yeah, the joysticks are still slightly taller than I'd like. They are a little bit tall, aren't they? But they feel great and keep my palms from accidentally brushing the pads. He says, okay, you might ask, but all the games I just named have gamepad support. What about the decades of mouse and keyboard fare? The Steam Deck lets you borrow or build a dizzying array of custom control schemes that make them feel at home too. In addition to providing an entire traditional gamepad worth of analog joysticks, triggers, and face buttons, almost all of which feel fantastic, I might add you also get the 4 rear grip buttons and a pair of Steam Deck controller pads so customizable, calling them trackpads feels like a disservice. You can click, swipe, flick, and spin a virtual trackball, press down on their pressure-sensitive surfaces, and even set their edges to continually move or turn your character. And every one of the deck's 20 plus programmable controls can issue multiple different commands depending on how and when you press. You can build macros and coordinate combinations with other keys and per key turbo modes. And like I said, it's dizzying, and Valve barely explains how any of it works. So this is probably something they're going to have to polish over time, right, and explain to the customer how to set up these key bindings for games that don't have traditional controller support baked in. Um, here we go. Look, so it looks like it's going to have community layouts. So for games that don't have traditional controller support baked in, you are going to be able to download community layouts, controller layouts for those games. But yeah, interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if you're thinking, wasn't the Steam controller a flop? But I'm here to tell you, not only did it have an amazing cult following, the deck makes it work. The fancy touchpad no longer gets in your way if you're not interested, and you can now get precision aiming without relying on them one bit. Just rest your thumb on the thumbstick to activate a gyro so you can tilt the deck to easily zero in on your target. And while you have the option of spending hours designing the perfect multi-layer control scheme, Valve makes it easy to add that gyro or a few extra grip buttons and go on with your day. Interesting. Oh, we're back. Sorry, I took a little break from the video there. So he says, I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, sorry. Scroll down. With control, I did both. Instantly making myself crack shot with the railgun revolver while biting controls to let me fly around the air and summon a shield of debris, without ever taking my thumbs off the all-important sticks. With Slay the Spire and Into the Breach, I slightly reduced the friction on the virtual trackball so that I could easily swing, flying the 2D mouse cursor around. For many games, I often found that a Steam controller cultist had already uploaded a great controller scheme. I love what Runic did with Torchlight 2, and it's a cinch to take any profile you see, remix it, and share it with the community. Still, I'm not going to tell you that the Steam controller is better than my 20 years of muscle memory with a mouse and keyboard, or necessarily a fit for every game. While I'm sure you might be able to swing a mean sword in Mordhau with the right tweaks, the full forearm motion of a mouse just feels right to me. There's another cracking photo. For me, the best part of deck is how you can suspend this entire SteamOS session at any moment without needing to pause or save. I was just about to run out of battery in the middle of a boss fight against a nasty dark demon in control, but I never lost my place. I hit the power button, and though it took an entire hour for me to get back to a charger, I was able to fire it right back up again and keep on playing. Speaking of the battery, it's a weak spot, but it's not as bad as I feared. I just got under 2 hours of control on the deck at 60 FPS and 60% brightness, but nearly 4 hours when I set it to 30 FPS or in moderately less intensive games, and I never had to wonder how much time I had left or how to extend the battery life because the deck can instantly report its own total power draw. If you see 20 watt in Mango HUD, you'll know you'll get roughly 2 hours of the deck out of the deck's 40 watt hour pack. Control drew 12 watts at 30 FPS. Max Payne 2 drew 10 watts at 60 FPS. And Nidhogg drew only 6 watts. But not all games fit that formula, though I saw Resident Evil 2 pulling over 20 watts at 30 FPS, and many games crossed the 24 watt hour mark at 60 FPS. You should know that downloading games at high speed dramatically stresses the system too, drawing just as much electricity and causing stutter when I tried to play Call of Juarez simultaneously. So that's that Mango HUD overlay. So it tells you how much battery it's using and how much you've got remaining and stuff. So that's really good. That's nice that they baked that in. 25% battery remaining. Fallout 4 is drawing 22.6 watts, giving me at most 28 minutes before I need to plug in, or I can extend it by throttling, the frame rate. Those sessions were generally long enough to satisfy me, although I'm the kind of guy who's never far away from a high wattage USB-C power delivery battery. So that's one thing. That's one thing that you might want to have if you're planning on taking this out for a road trip or something, is a portable battery pack. And there's so many massive battery packs. One of my favorite ones is the Anchor power delivery battery packs. I think they're 26,800 watts. um those last me a while, and they should be perfect for something like the Switch, for the Steam Deck. RAV Power is another good brand for battery packs. I always travel with battery packs. You never know when you're going to need them for your phone or whatever else. And I definitely, for this, I recommend getting a big one, like a 26,800 watt one, just so you've got enough juice, to keep you playing for a good enough amount of time. So yeah. I'll also point out that the original Nintendo Switch wasn't dramatically held back by the fact that it only got 2.5 hours of Breath of the Wild on the charge, but I worry about what happens after a year or two as the battery ages, particularly since iFixit shows it's not easy to remove. Valve's Lawrence Yang tells me the battery will be one of the replacement parts on offer, though, and it does take pains to protect it while charging. I never saw the system draw more than 30 watts unless I was playing a game. It dropped to half speed when it got 3/4 of the way. It trickle charges the last 10% or so, and the last 4% took 15 whole minutes to complete. The whole charge takes about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Ooh, that's a while. And it won't keep on charging forever on the plug. Valve lets it drip or drain to 95% after a long period of time. What doesn't satisfy me is the Steam Deck's fan. It never stops whining, the ramp up can be jarring, and while Valve's designer is telling me that they're still optimizing the curve and improving the ramp rate, they say high-end games that max out the APU will likely not see a ton of improvement. On the plus side, the fan does the job. I never saw the deck throttle or felt the deck's grips or controls get too hot. So that's important, right? The fan can get loud on this thing, but it's never going to get hot enough to where it's going to be uncomfortable to hold. And what they mean by they're going to improve the fan curve is basically they're going to make it so the they're going to make it so the fan doesn't just instantly go from like running at 20% all the way up to like 100% and up and down, like, randomly. They're going to make it so it's like a smooth increase as the temperatures go up. The set temperatures, like max temps, it's going to adjust the fan accordingly and try and do it so it's like a nice smooth curve instead of like being at 20% fan usage to 100% down to 80%, just up and down, making all sorts of noise. They're going to try and improve that. But for games that do push the CPU to its limits and run at very high temps, it's obviously, adjusting the fan curve and how fast it ramps up the fan is not going to make much of a difference. It's still going to run at 100% and make noise whilst it's doing that. Whilst it's doing that. When the Steam Deck works, I finally feel like I could take PC gaming with me. Um, oh, he says I think the screen has too much bezel, and the Steam menu could use a tactile press. That's one thing I. That's the first thing I thought as well when I saw the Steam Deck. I thought this bezel's a little bit too big. It's like the bezel on the original Nintendo Switch, right? I think they could slim this down a little bit, and I think they probably will when the Steam Deck 2 comes out. Um, he says, when the Steam Deck works, I finally feel like I can take PC gaming with me. I fire up the new God of War or XCOM 2 or Streets of Rage 4, let my fingers melt into the fantastic controls, feel the rousing music come out of a truly excellent stereo speaker, watch smooth gameplay on the remarkably good 7-inch 1280 by 800 screen, and sigh with delight knowing that I can get through my long neglected PC games one bite-sized session at a time. But the operative word is when, because when the Steam Deck software is coming in hotter than any gadget I've ever tested, every single day I used the Steam Deck, I was dodging error messages, bugs, crashes, black screens, UI glitches, regressions, even entire future changes from Valve on the eve of release. I lost track of how many times I had to reboot the system or reconnect a device because Bluetooth or Wi Fi or an SD card stopped working as I expected. A few games I downloaded never finished. Installing, randomly stopping in the middle of retroactively running out of space. Some games told me their content was locked when I tried to move them, or that they grabbed corrupt update files. Sometimes parts of my library or all the games on my SD card would temporarily go missing. I destroyed one card after the deck seemingly froze whilst formatting it, and I stupidly reset the console. Never ever do that while writing to Flash. There were times I couldn't reach the Steam servers to download or save games or verify ownership of a title. That's one thing you're going to have to fight with DRM. And let me tell you, it really sucks to find out that you can't play a single player game like Control or Red Dead Redemption 2 on the go because of DRM. But he says my phone hotspot worked in a pinch. Um, so he also says you've also got access to the desktop mode. While Valve's docking station and app shortcuts aren't making launch date, it's still a full computer with a USB-C port that supports peripherals and displays, and I put some of that to the test. Hooked up my USB-C hub, monitor, mouse, keyboard, external drive, SD cards, and USB-C power delivery adapters, and took the full Linux desktop for a spin. And as long as I didn't try to do anything too fancy, everything worked. By everything I mean I installed Dolphin emulator, got Metroid Prime running perfectly on the Steam Deck, 60 FPS at upscaled 720p resolution with anti-aliasing, with the caveat that I couldn't disconnect the external mouse and keyboard until after I launched the game. I downloaded Chrome and Slack and Discord and worked from the Steam Deck, writing this entire post for The Verge. So he actually completed the article on his Steam Deck. That's cool. He watched Netflix and YouTube to give myself a break, and then I fired up desktop version of Steam, added Dolphin, Chrome, and Discord as shortcuts so I could launch them via SteamOS as well, building specific profiles in the Chrome web browser for Stadia and Netflix so wouldn't have to rely too much on SteamOS's lackluster but handsome touchscreen keyboard. Back in SteamOS is where I started to run into issues. Chrome browser wouldn't launch full screen unless I tricked it using a Netflix or YouTube toggle. Dolphin wouldn't let me see menus. Discord wouldn't properly detect my microphone. SteamOS only seems to detect the decks directly connected to SD card, even when I had two extras mounted on the desktop. But I did manage to get Destiny 2 running a Stadia that way, and was surprised how well it can fit the Steam Deck's screen and emulated keyboard and mouse controls. I won't mince words. I'm a Linux noob, and I haven't been able to get the Epic Game Store up and running to see if I could force its games through Proton as well. Too many dependencies, not enough sudo perhaps, but I did install some late native Linux games from GOG and the Humble Bundle with only moderate success. Cool. Occasionally, the whole system would lock up. Sometimes the UI would break or scale badly while connecting and or disconnecting an external monitor. Oh no. And while I did have a lot of problems playing or installing games to the SD card, I did have a lot of issues transferring between the SD card and internal drive, and unusually long transfer times during which the deck wouldn't let me do anything else with the system. Games I'd already installed would suddenly need new updates or need to randomly re-verify a gigabyte or three worth of contents, and I had to download Elden Ring a second time after I already preloaded it. Even when the Steam Deck has no Wi-Fi, it pauses for a long time before launching games, presumably to see if it can download a cloud save. In many cases, Valve's developers admitted I'd spotted a bug, and to their credit, a lot has changed over the past 2 weeks. The UI used to be incredibly choppy, and it's way smoother now. I can now stream games reliably to the deck from my desktop PC, even if I can't actually use the deck's controls or gyro there just yet. After at least 3 huge tweaks to the frame limiter, it's finally stable. A huge update to Proton enabled a whole bunch of additional games. But as I type these words, Valve has yet to fix Bluetooth, which never fails to lag, skip, and fail to reconnect after waking from sleep. That's a big deal. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. And a recent update introduced a new issue where the deck no longer reconnects to Wi-Fi, even though I have auto connect checked and the password saved. The auto brightness adjustment has never worked properly for me, despite Valve's tweaks. The last update seemingly broke the download progress indicator, and I think you get the picture. In an interview, Valve candidly told The Verge that it knows many things won't be ready on day one. It had to focus on showstopper bugs and hardware production while prioritizing other work. So many things will be coming out immediately after launch, in the weeks after launch. Valve veteran Greg Coomer tells me, we really do look at it as the starting gun instead of the finish line. Valve's Lawrence Yang says early adopters should expect frequent fixes for some time to come, even if you won't necessarily see the multiple changes per day I saw during the review period. So that's one thing we're going to have to get used to as an early adopter, right? We're going to have to get used to bugs. That's something, as an early adopter, you should be conscious of. This isn't going to be like the Nintendo Switch. It's not going to be as polished as the Nintendo Switch. There are going to be bugs. We're going to have to deal with them. We're going to have to wait for updates. We're going to have to report the bugs. That's just life as an early adopter, and it's a price you pay for being part of the early adopters club, right? But I'm okay with that, and it's going to be like having a gaming PC. There are going to be things that you run into that you don't run into on other systems, like having to re-verify some game update files, dealing with some corrupt updates from time to time, and having to re-download them. That's one thing that concerns me, though, is the fact that sometimes if you're transferring something off the SD card, it can lock up the system. That's not very good, but I guess we're going to find all this stuff out as we get our Steam Decks. Are frequent updates a bad thing? Early access can be neat. It's exciting to see new features appear, like how all of a sudden I could play my games on an external monitor with 3 different kinds of upscaling, including AMD's FSR, which you can apply to any game from the quick settings menu, and made Fallout 4 look so much better on a big monitor. But it's not great if, say, you want to hear how well the Steam Deck runs Windows before you buy one, because I never got to test that. Valve's promised GPU drivers have yet to materialize. This is something I wanted to do on day one, install Windows on it, and install games like Warzone using the Battle.net launcher. Doesn't look like the GPU drivers are out yet, so that's a little bit concerning. Hopefully we get some news on that soon, and I'll be first to report it on the YouTube channel here. So subscribe and hit the bell icon. He says the ABXY face buttons rattle a tiny bit if you shake the deck, but I like how they feel to press, so that's good. And you might actually care how well the Steam Deck runs Windows, because despite Valve's best efforts, the single most frustrating thing in the world is the one that everyone's coming a mile away. Right now, you won't quite know whether a game will actually run on Linux until you've downloaded it, installed it, patched it, let it install the first time, launched dependencies, and then hit play. Let's talk about those efforts for a moment, because they're not small. Valve's Proton compatibility layer, which is built on top of Wine, really does make many Windows games run on Linux and run incredibly well. I only saw the rare glitch, like weird effects around flashing lights in Max Payne 3, choppy cutscenes in 1997's Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear if those plagued the Windows versions as well. Additionally, Valve has a team of people reviewing the entire Steam catalog to see how games play. As of February 24th, 419 of them work great, 398 are playable with tweaks, according to SteamDB scrapers. And you can also theoretically look at the ProtonDB community reports to see what's broken, or try Valve's checker to see which games in your own library might work. But in practice, I couldn't completely rely on any of those sources when it came time to play. They've all got holes. Duck Game is a certified gold on ProtonDB, but listed as unsupported on the Steam Deck, and it didn't run for me. Valve's database shows Persona 4 Golden is completely unsupported too, even though Valve did the legwork to fix it, and I played a few minutes without issue. And I definitely disagree that Deathloop plays great on deck right out of the box, considering the low frame rate and stuttery Xbox gamepad emulation I saw when I tried to play play. Valve also lists its own Half-Life 2 as a great on deck title, but the default control scheme didn't work for me at all, though a custom one totally did. And even if the listings were accurate today, there's a chance they won't be tomorrow. Like how Cyberpunk 2077 was working, even after the big patch, and as of publish, I can't run it at all. He says, reading games from an SD card never felt like a problem, but write speeds felt a bit slow. This, up to 90 megabytes a second card, usually only gave me half of that. If you're looking to play some of the biggest games in the world, which often use anti-cheat software, we've covered this in many videos, you may need Windows as well. Remember my PUBG analogy at the beginning of the story? PUBG doesn't run at all, nor does Destiny 2, or Apex Legends, or Grand Theft Auto 5, or Lost Ark. My very first night with the Steam Deck, I discovered it won't run the most important games I play with friends. Halo Infinite, Back 4 Blood, and none of these are a fluke. When we contacted the biggest game developers about whether they deign to enable anti-cheat now that Valve offers built-in support, most of them declined to even answer the question. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney was braver. We covered this in a video. He said Fortnite won't because the rewards don't justify the work it would take to convince themselves they aren't letting cheaters in. On a lesser note, Valve doesn't differentiate between whether Windows or Linux version of a game is the version that's been verified, so you need to watch out for a game that might quietly have both. My review unit installed the Linux version of Rocket League, which no longer offers multiplayer, and the Windows version of the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which doesn't launch at all. And while you can dive into a compatibility menu to force the deck to download the other version, there's nothing to warn you which is which. And sadly, the Linux version of Shadow of the Tomb Raider doesn't support Windows cloud saves, so I might have to start that from scratch. Oh no. That's something I never considered. Is that something like if you have a Windows cloud save for a game on Steam, you might not be able to load that that save file, the cloud save, if you're running the Steam Deck, which is running on Linux. So that kind of sucks. But I'm sure that doesn't apply to every game, just Tomb Raider. And they might even fix that at some point. He says, I don't blame Valve for shipping the Steam Deck before it's fully ready. I might have made the same choice myself, considering Valve's got at least half a year's worth of pre-orders to fulfill before a single new customer will experience the deck. That's a lot of early adopters who will likely be willing to endure some bugs to be part of the club. Also, the deck's impressive performance might not be that impressive for long, since their RDNA to integrate graphics are beginning to make their way into thin and light laptops and presumably other portables to come. Valve probably doesn't want to sell steel chips. Yeah, that would kind of. I think that's what the Steam Deck's got going for it right now, is the fact that it's running like the latest generation of mobile like AMD gaming chips. It's not running any sort of like old CPU or APU, so that's what it's going for it. There's not many other thin and light devices out there that use the same graphics chip that the Steam Deck uses. So right now the ball's in their court, but as more devices start using these chips, we're going to start seeing comparisons against the Steam Deck, and as more devices come out, and see how they stack up against the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck might end up not being that special in a couple of months. Who knows? But you should know that it also means that reviewers like me didn't get to properly test it all. Not Windows, not the delayed dock, not Xbox Cloud Gaming, since we're still waiting on the Linux browser version to recognize the Steam Deck's gamepad, and not the ability to swap between two apps, because that's a feature Valve added at the last moment. And Verge doesn't review gadgets on potential. We review what we can see and touch. I do have some faith in Valve as an owner of an original Steam controller and the Steam Link streaming HDMI dongle, a passive observer of the Valve's Index VR headset, and a pundit who can draw a straight line between the Steam Deck and Valve's failed Steam machines. I'm pretty sure it isn't lip service when Valve says it's planning to keep updating the deck and building out the portable category. The Steam controller and Steam Link got bug fixes and future updates long after it was clear they weren't going to change the world. But if early access isn't your beverage of choice, you might just want to wait for a Steam Deck 2, because Valve is no big believer in the Osborne effect. It's already strongly hinting that a sequel is inbound. Valve has repeatedly said that the Steam Deck should be a multi-generational product, including in a new interview with The Verge. Valve founder Gabe Newell went one better in a chat with Edge, saying that the second iterations will be more about the capabilities that mobile gives us, above and beyond what you would get in a traditional desktop or laptop gaming environment. When I flew to Valve's headquarters last August to see the Steam Deck, I told you why I was putting money down. I love the idea of taking my PC games on the go, resuming them right where I left off on my desktop. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited about the Steam Deck, is that I could start off a game on my gaming PC, and when I want to go down and spend time with the family, I can just pick up my Steam Deck, go downstairs, and then continue where I left off on the gaming PC. And then when I'm done downstairs and I want to come back up and get the full experience on my gaming PC again, I can just continue where I left off on the Steam Deck, back and forth. It's awesome. Um, Finally having the time to play through Control, Resident Evil 2 and Fallout and The Witcher 3, and a mountain of indie games I used to wait years to buy on Switch because that's the only way I found enough time to see them through. So far, that's the one part of Steam Deck that's largely working out, and I can only hope that it'll get better. Maybe game developers will natively target the deck, maybe they'll come to terms with anti-cheat, or maybe like the Nvidia Shield Portable I reviewed and purchased in 2013, it'll stare down at me from a shelf, forever taunting me with unrealized potential. But at least this one seems to have a decent library of compatible games from the get-go. For now, I'm having fun. My own 64GB model is coming in Q2, and I can't wait to early access the heck out of its eMMC storage and probably swap in the SSD I already bought. So that was a pretty good review. It was a long-winded review, but hey, it was pretty good. So it comes courtesy of The Verge, like I said. You can go down and read the review yourself by clicking on the link down in the video description. It comes courtesy of Mr. Stephen Hollister on The Verge. I'll put up his Twitter. I'll put the Twitter link down below as well so you could follow him. So yeah, interesting. It's given me a lot of food for thought. We are going to have to deal with a lot of bugs, a lot of issues that I'm used to dealing with on the PC. But if anything, I'm gonna have to deal with more issues because the Steam Deck runs on Linux and not Windows. So there's gonna be another like layer of issues I have to work around. There is gonna be a lot of tweaking, but if you're used to gaming PCs and you're not gonna be too it's not gonna be too foreign to you having to tweak games and try and find a good balance between graphic fidelity and performance. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. How has this review changed how you felt about the Steam Deck? Let me know down below, and obviously stay tuned to this YouTube channel for more Steam Deck coverage as I get my hands on a Steam Deck. As we get more news coming in, I will be sure to cover it. Sorry this video was a little bit long-winded. Like I said, it was a long review. Damn it, Steve. Damn it, Sean. But yeah. Hopefully it was informative if you did decide to stay and listen to me ramble on. I had to film this review. I had to film this video twice. I spent like half an hour reading it the first time, only to find out the microphone was muted the whole time. So if I sounded a little bit out of breath whilst doing this video, it's because I just had to spend another half an hour recording it and reading it out again, and my throat is really hurting me. So anyways, guys, thank you for watching this video. Drop a like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell icon for more. Please consider becoming a member by clicking the join button and joining the Blaze2K clan. We love tech on this YouTube channel. We love gaming. We love 3D printing. We love virtual reality. We love everything that you probably love. So I'm sure you'd be welcome in our little community. Anyways, guys, have a great day. Enjoy. Have a good weekend. And let's get hyped up for the Steam Deck. I'll let you know when I get my pre-order in on Twitter. So go check me out on Twitter as well. I'll let you know when I order mine. Peace out, guys. Love you.